I've been debating on doing this video for a while, partially because I recently put out a video where I put my stance in there clearly in passing, as well as the fact that I don't feel like I am as directly educated on the topic at hand, nor have I done enough research for me to feel like my opinion on the matter is something that could be considered as an educated opinion, especially given one of the factions at play. And that being said, this topic is something that requires nuance, like all topics I cover, and this is maybe the 23rd attempt at recording the video. What's going on in Palestine should not be a surprise to anyone who's been paying attention. Since its inception as a colonial power, the state of Israel has been an oppressor of the people within. The Palestinian people who were living there long before the Israelis got there. And the current actions going on are situations that have occurred many times throughout history in many different places around the world, wherever colonialism happens. But what's going on in Israel, and has been going on in Israel, has had an additional level of insidious nature added onto it. You see, the Israeli government wants you to refer to Palestine as the world's largest open-air prison, as opposed to what it really is: the world's largest concentration camp. And the reason they would rather you refer to it as an open-air prison is partially because of the messaging and the PR that Israel likes to paint itself with. The Israeli government is fascist. Let's be quite honest with this. Because the Israeli government is Zionistic at its root. And Zionism functionally shares a lot of aspects with fascism. So many, in fact, that it is on the same level of fascism as one would say the KKK is. But unlike the KKK, the Zionists actually managed to get a hold of themselves some political power. Granted, they didn't get a hold of it themselves, they were granted it by the United States, and are still granted that political power by the United States in the form of all of the military aid that has been received. And because of the oppression caused by the fascist apartheid state that is Israel, one could say that all of the actions within it taken by the oppressed people would be justified. However, this is not necessarily the case. You see, that parlance of the enemy of my enemy is my friend is a fundamentally liberal phrase and ideology. The enemy of my enemy is my friend happens to be the same justification that liberals used to side with fascism in all of its forms. Because at the end of the day, the liberals and the fascists both dislike actual socialism and communism. They dislike for the people to have their own autonomy on governing themselves and ruling themselves. And the reason I bring this up is because I do not necessarily know enough about Hamas to back them up. From what I have heard and been able to figure out from an outsider perspective without too much research, is they are a right-wing organization. And what's more worrisome still is that that declaration of war placed upon Hamas by Netanyahu functionally paints all anti-Zionist revolutionary movements as equally Hamas. This is not the case. This should never be the case. There are left-wing organizations that are anti-Zionist that exist within Palestine that, despite not being Hamas, are treated as Hamas. And let's not ignore the fact that this conflict that has been going on does not and has never existed within a vacuum. With all of the pies that the United States has been putting its finger in, the thumb has always been left in Israel. Partially to have a voting party within the UN that will always side with you, but also to have a military outpost that doesn't quite look as much like a military outpost for the United States now, does it? It has its own sovereign flag that it's waving. And then furthermore, any critique on Israel as a government is deemed as anti-Semitic by the Zionistic Israeli government, despite the fact that most Jewish people that I know are anti-Zionist. The fact is, the argument that Zionism and Semitism are the same thing is itself an anti-Semitic argument. Oddly enough, it's an anti-Semitic argument that tends to be very much loved by Zionists. This also leads directly back to why the Zionist forces do not wish for you to refer to what is going on in Palestine in quote-unquote peacetime as the concentration camp that it actually is. Because part of what their justification is trying to get a homeland that has been taken back from them, that even their own history states that they came to and conquered post-Egypt way back after Moses. And I'm not saying this to be rude or anything, I'm just trying to generalize here, but was taken in a colonial state way back then, pre-diaspora. Also, the fact is, the Zionist state paints the Palestinian Jews as no different than the Palestinian Muslims, because their ideology is not about religion, it is about control, ethnic control, and creating an ethno-state. It also ignores all of the brutality and the bombing of hospitals and schools and families that the Israeli government has been doing for, again, longer than I've been alive. And this is really all I can say, that I feel like I have done enough research and educated myself upon on the topic, because this is a very, again, nuanced topic that you don't want to be representing incorrectly. But either way, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.